Angela Carter, an independent woman, discovers her neighbors repeatedly trespassing in her backyard pool, from kids sneaking into full-blown adult pool parties. When warnings go ignored, she crafts a clever plan to strike back, turning intruders into a laughingstock. Will they dare to return? Angela Carter, 39, lived alone in a beautiful 2-story home in Austin, Texas. It was the result of years of hard work, a private backyard with a sparkling pool, her personal sanctuary. To her, this wasn't just a house. It was a place of peace and solitude, a retreat from the chaos of the outside world. She wasn't interested in being the neighborhood social butterfly. She just wanted quiet. But that peace wouldn't last for long. One afternoon, after returning from a shopping trip, Angela noticed wet footprints trailing from the backyard gate to the sidewalk. A strange towel was carelessly draped over her lounge chair, and a half-empty soda can sat nearby. She frowned. No one but her had access to the backyard. Checking her security cameras, she didn't see anything conclusive, just a few strange movements on the edges of the frame. When she asked the neighbors, they brushed it off with casual shrugs. "Oh, it's probably just some kids messing around." "No big deal, don't make a fuss." Angela tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. Still, something about the situation didn't sit right. She had no idea this was only the beginning. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in Austin, Texas. The summer sun poured through the windows, casting warm streaks of light on Angela Carter's hardwood floor. She was curled up on her sofa, lost in the pages of a gripping thriller, enjoying the peaceful weekend she had worked so hard for. Then the sound came. A sudden splash, followed by laughter. Angela's brow furrowed. That was coming from her backyard, her pool. But no one was supposed to be there. Setting down her book, she walked to the sliding glass door and froze. Right there in her own pool, a teenage boy was swimming leisurely, as if he owned the place. A teenage girl sat on the pool's edge, her feet dipping in the water, giggling at her phone. Neither of them looked remotely concerned. They weren't sneaking around. They weren't hiding. They acted like this was completely normal. Angela's eyes darted around. On the patio table, a pizza box sat open, a few slices missing. Next to it, a beer bottle, condensation still fresh on the glass. Her pulse spiked with anger. They weren't just trespassing. They were making themselves at home. Angela slammed the sliding door open, the sharp sound cutting through the warm Texas air. Her voice was sharp and unwavering. "What the hell are you doing in my yard?" The reaction was instant. The boy flinched mid-stroke, scrambling toward the pool's edge like a fish caught in a net. The girl's eyes went wide, her phone nearly slipping from her grasp. Within seconds, both of them bolted. The boy clambered out of the pool, water dripping onto the hot pavement as he grabbed his shoes. "We didn't think you'd be home," he blurted. Angela's stomach twisted. Didn't think she'd be home, so if she weren't, they would have just helped themselves? The girl grabbed his arm, mumbling something, and then, just like that, they were gone, sprinting toward the fence and disappearing over it like they had done this before. Angela stood there, her fists clenched so tight her nails dug into her palms. Her breathing was heavy, her heart pounding, and just as she was about to turn back inside, she noticed something even more infuriating. A few of her neighbors were watching. A middle-aged woman stood by her porch, arms crossed, shaking her head with an amused smirk. A man leaning against his truck barely glanced up, shrugging as he muttered, "They're just kids, Angela. It's just a pool. No need to be so dramatic." Angela's blood ran cold. They didn't care. They weren't shocked. This wasn't a mistake. This was normal to them. She took a slow, deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. She wasn't going to make a scene, not yet. But one thing was clear, this wasn't over. If her neighbors weren't going to respect her property, then she would make sure they had no choice but to. The Texas heat soared to 105 degrees Fahrenheit, the pavement shimmering under the relentless afternoon sun. Angela pulled into her driveway, exhausted from a long day at work. All she wanted was a cold drink, a quiet evening, and maybe a dip in her pool. But the moment she stepped out of her car, she heard it. Music. Not just any music. Ear-splitting EDM blasting through the air. Mixed with it were loud voices, laughter, splashing water, and the unmistakable clink of bottles. Angela's pulse quickened. She wasn't expecting guests. She wasn't throwing a party. A sinking feeling settled in her stomach as she strode toward the backyard. The gate, her always locked gate, was wide open. And then she saw it. Over 20 people, men, women, teenagers, were partying in her backyard. Several strangers floated in her pool, chugging beers and tossing a beach ball like they were at a public resort. A group of women lounged on her pool chairs, wrapped in towels, sipping on cocktails. A long table sat littered with half-eaten pizza, crushed beer cans, and greasy paper plates. But the worst part? A middle-aged man, someone she had never seen before, was sprawled out on her favorite patio chair. He leaned back, a beer in one hand, smirking as their eyes met. Angela felt her blood boil. This wasn't just trespassing. This was outright theft. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. Instead, she turned on her heel and marched straight to the backyard's power box. With one hard yank, the music cut off. The patio lights flickered out. The pool's filtration system went silent. For a moment, the backyard was completely still. All eyes turned toward Angela. Some looked confused, others annoyed. Then, in a voice sharp as a blade, she said, "Get out of my house, or should I call the cops?" And just like that, chaos erupted. A drunk guy, startled and off balance, tripped and fell straight into the pool, sending a wave of water over the deck. A girl screamed as a cup of beer spilled all over her dress. People started scrambling for their belongings, tripping over pool chairs and towels. But not Linda. Linda, the entitled neighbor, stood her ground. Arms crossed, she lifted her chin, voice dripping with mockery. "Relax, Angela. We were just having a little fun." Angela let out a short, humorless laugh, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. Then she met Linda's eyes, her voice cold and steady. "If you step foot in my yard again, I won't just call the cops." A heavy silence hung over the backyard. Some people glanced at each other, suddenly unsure. Finally, one man muttered a curse under his breath, grabbed his shoes, and stormed off. A few others followed, picking up their purses and dragging their kids along. Within minutes, the backyard was empty. Only the wreckage of their party remained, discarded beer cans, soggy towels, food crumbs on the ground. Angela stood there, her chest still rising and falling with adrenaline, eyes locked on the now still pool. She knew this wasn't over. It was never going to be that easy. But if they thought she was just going to let this slide, they had no idea who they were messing with. Angela wasn't the type to let things slide. Her neighbors might think she was just blowing off steam, that she'd forget about the pool invasion after a few days. They were dead wrong. She didn't just want them to stop. She wanted them to be too terrified to ever try again. That night, Angela sat at her kitchen table, watching the security footage. Clips of strangers partying in her backyard replayed over and over. Enough. She grabbed a pen and paper, writing down her next steps. This time, she was taking control. The next morning, Angela drove straight to the hardware store. She bought industrial-grade steel padlocks, the kind that couldn't be cut or picked. She reinforced her backyard gate with one, added another to the side entrance, and even secured the bottom of the fence with wire mesh to keep anyone from crawling under. No key, no entry, no way to climb over, even better. But that was just the beginning. That people fear what they don't understand. So she ordered a custom sign, printed in huge, bold red letters. Warning: pool chemically treated exposure may cause rashes, itching, and temporary skin discoloration. Of course, it wasn't true, but they didn't know that. She bolted the sign onto the backyard fence right where anyone walking by would see it. And just to sell it further, Angela wasn't done yet. She called up a friend who worked in pool maintenance and asked for an empty chemical drum. The container still had its original hazard labels, bright red warning symbols for toxicity and skin irritation. Angela placed it right next to the pool pump in full view from the fence line. Now anyone peeking over the fence would see. A terrifying warning sign. A suspicious chemical drum. A pool that looked like it could turn them into a mutant if they touched it. Angela didn't just want to scare them, she wanted consequences. So she installed motion-activated sprinklers along the fence. How it worked. If anyone tried climbing over, the sensors would detect movement, and a freezing cold blast of water would drench them instantly. Not harmful, just enough to scare the hell out of them. Within 24 hours, Angela's backyard went from a free-for-all to an impenetrable fortress. And the results? Priceless. The very next day, a group of teenagers walked past her yard. They stopped. They read the sign. They spotted the chemical drum. One of them whispered something, then pulled out his phone, probably recording a video to show his friends. Then, within seconds, the group turned around and bolted. Angela smirked from her window. Of course, Linda, the entitled neighbor, wasn't going to stay quiet. Hours later, Angela checked her phone and saw a brand new post in the neighborhood Facebook group. Linda B. posted in Austin Community Watch. Just a heads up, looks like Angela put some kind of dangerous chemicals in her pool. No one knows if it's safe. Be careful, y'all. The comment section blew up. Is that even legal? Why is she making such a big deal over a pool? What if it leaks into the ground? Angela laughed out loud. They weren't mad because they got caught trespassing. They were mad because they realized their free ride was over. Angela didn't bother responding to the Facebook post. She didn't need to. The fact that the kids ran away in terror was proof that her plan had worked. And if anyone else wanted to test her patience, They'd soon find out. Angela Carter wasn't someone to mess with. Angela didn't move. She just watched, waiting. The perfect payback. The first intruder crept toward the pool, squatting down as if trying to examine the water. The second one lifted his phone, probably recording a video to prove the chemical warning was fake. And then, motion-activated sprinklers triggered. A blast of freezing cold water shot out, hitting them square in the face. Both of them screamed. The guy in front stumbled backward, slipping on the wet stone and landing flat on his back. The one with the phone gasped in shock, flailing as he tried to protect his screen. What the fuck? Run! Run! They bolted like soaked rats. The first guy scrambled up the fence, but the water kept hitting his back, making it hard to get a grip. Angela, still in bed, grinned as she watched them panic. This wasn't just a backyard. This was a war zone. The next morning, the whole neighborhood knew. By morning, word had already spread. Angela barely made it outside to grab the newspaper before she overheard the whispers. A group of kids huddled together, talking in hushed, nervous voices. A woman on her morning walk gossiped with a friend. I heard 2 boys tried sneaking into Angela's yard and got blasted with ice-cold water. Apparently, one of them lost his brand new phone. Linda, the entitled neighbor, stood on her porch, arms crossed, face pale, but for once she said nothing. Angela took a deep breath, smiled, and picked up her paper. No one tried again. Because now, the whole neighborhood understood one thing. Angela Carter's pool was off limits. The next morning, as Angela sipped her hot coffee, savoring the peace she had fought so hard for, a loud, impatient knock echoed through the house. Bang, bang, bang. She set her cup down, not in a rush, but not moving slowly either. She knew exactly who was at the door. When she opened it, just as expected, Linda. The woman stood with her hands on her hips, eyes burning with frustration. She had clearly spent all night stewing in her anger, and now she was ready to unleash it on Angela. You've taken this way too far, Angela, Linda snapped. It's just a damn pool. Did you really have to start a war with the whole neighborhood? Angela leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. A cold smile played at her lips. Just a pool? She said, her voice slow and deliberate. Then why is everyone so desperate to get into it? Linda hesitated. Angela caught the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, a small crack, but enough to tell her who was really in control here. Linda quickly tried to regain her composure, tilting her chin up. If you didn't want to share, you could have just said so. Nobody likes having a selfish neighbor. Angela arched an eyebrow, letting out a sharp laugh. Share? Linda, this is my house, my pool, my backyard. If I wanted it to sit empty all year, that's my choice. No one gets to take what isn't theirs. Linda pressed her lips together, her face flushing with irritation. She was used to people giving in, used to getting her way, used to sweet-talking or guilt-tripping her way through situations. But Angela was done playing nice. So, is this how you want to live? Linda tried one last time. Isolating yourself, making the whole neighborhood hate you? Angela tilted her head back and laughed, a real laugh, calm, unbothered, completely unmoved. Linda, do you really think being liked is more important than not being taken advantage of? I don't need people to like me. I just need them to understand one thing. Don't mess with what's not theirs. Linda inhaled sharply, her eyes locking onto Angela's in a final glare, but she had no comeback, because she knew Angela was right. With nothing left to say, Linda spun on her heel and stormed off, her frustration evident in every stiff movement. Angela watched her go for a moment, then simply closed the door, as if the entire confrontation wasn't even worth her time. She picked up her coffee again, sank back into her favorite chair by the window and enjoyed the quiet satisfaction of victory, and this time no one dared disturb it. In the days that followed, a noticeable change settled over the neighborhood. No more blaring music echoing from Angela's backyard. No more splashing, laughter, or uninvited guests. No more wet footprints on the pavement, abandoned towels, or empty beer cans littering her patio. No one dared to trespass into Angela Carter's pool again. Her plan had worked. The same people who once treated her backyard like a public facility now avoided eye contact whenever they passed by her house. The teenagers who used to hop her fence now only stole quick, wary glances at the warning sign before hurrying along. And Linda, the one who once insisted the pool should be shared, had fallen completely silent. Angela didn't need anyone to like her. She didn't need an apology. She only needed one thing, peace. And finally she had it. One evening, Angela sat by her window gazing out at her backyard. The pool's crystal clear water was still and undisturbed, reflecting the fiery hues of the sunset. She took a slow sip of her coffee, a small satisfied smile playing on her lips. At last, this space was hers again. No one could step into it without permission. No one could take advantage of her generosity, and most importantly, no one would mistake her kindness for weakness ever again. Angela had learned an important lesson. If you don't set boundaries, people will take advantage of you. Sometimes you don't need to be liked. You just need to stand up for yourself. She had no regrets. She wasn't cruel. She had simply done what any homeowner should do, protect what's theirs. And if anyone ever dared to test that boundary again, they would quickly realize they had messed with the wrong person.